Alright guys, let's hop right into it. All of the patch notes that are important, what you want to actually know from the most recent Campfire. There basically was a live stream. It's like an hour-ish long, and I'm here to condense everything and give you guys the important information at rapid fire speed. So, starting right off, the important things that I want to go over really quick, while it's just kind of playing in the background here. The important things is, when is this patch coming out? So the patch notes are coming out on August 2nd. Now, on August 8th is when we actually get the patch that has all of these changes. So what's going to be happening in this patch? So we're getting uniques buffed. We're going to get more build diversity. We're going to get density buff. We're getting ultimate buffs. There's a small buff with Malignant Heart, and Temerity got Giga buff. Those are the pants that give you the shield. On top of that, bosses are going to be getting harder in the game in Will Tier 3 and 4, but they're going to give you better loot guaranteed legendary. And then on top of that, goblins at level 15 will give you 100% chance to drop a legendary, and the respec cost is going down 40%. On top of that, the teleporting is going to be changed from 3 seconds. Well, it was changed from 3 seconds to 5. Now it's going from 5 to 3, so it's reverting it. And then on top of that, the Nightmare Sigils, they are going to remove the resource drain / cold enchanted. And on top of that, there's a mount buff. They didn't specify what it's going to do. Does that mean you could just jump over the little little skeleton blockades or little rocks, or it should just ignore unit collision, honestly, is I think what should happen with the mount. And then on top of that, they briefly kind of mentioned wings and pets, something that they may add later, so it's not out of the question, which would be an indirect buff to gold. So start off, something important that I want to go over. So what are these changes with the new uniques? Now, they didn't show off every single one of these. This is just one example of course, many. So you'll see over here with this Hellhammer, it says that you get bonus damage to crowd control. They're changing it to give you crit strike damage. Now, that makes a lot of things better. It generally, things that would give you, say, basic attack speed, that's almost like a worthless stat for 90% of builds, and this is Arc Lash, right? But what I do want to go over really quickly is word for word what they said on how this works, because you may not want to play the game right now because the new stuff has to actually drop as a new item to get the new stat. So I'm going to let you guys hear it word for word because it's a little bit confusing.
But you can see here on Hellhammer, we're also doing another change where we're actually granting you bonus critical strike damage and removing the bonus damage to crowd control enemies, right? So on the left, what you see here, when you log into the game, after this patch, the left version is what you're going to get. So you're not going to get the critical strike damage change where the actual item affix there, the rule changed, but you are going to get the updates to the upheaval, lasting longer, and doing more damage. On the right, when you find your new items after the patch, you're going to get the new affixes, the new rules, and things on the item.
Okay, so just so we're 100% clear on this, you will not get the newer stats that would be let's say, the bonus damage or whatever, but as far as its special power, this it will go over, which is kind of weird because you would usually want to have all the items kind of synergized. Otherwise, you have these legacy items like in Diablo 3 where you can never get again, and they might actually be better for very, very niche things, and they simply just can't roll in the game. But that's the way it's working, so you might want to wait to actually play because obviously crit strike damage is much better than crowd controlled enemies because there's additive versus multiplicative, right? Now, as far as all of the buff changes, I'm going to go over these kind of rapid fire. I'm not going to go super deep into it, but I'll briefly show you guys on screen. So I'm just going to mention Fireball, you get a little bit more mana. I'm not going to go over the exact numerical stats, and the reason why is I plan to cover these later when these are actually finalized. What they mentioned over here is not actually final. They said that it's pretty much what we're going to be getting. They said it was 90% of this. So some of these numbers could change, take it with a grain of salt, but these are the massive big buffs that we've been waiting for: the Sorceress, the Barbarian. There's also a Rogue buff. There's a couple Druid things in here too. It's not just for the Sorceress and the Barbarian, but that's kind of the main classes are going to get the buffs here. So starting right off, let's go over the Firebolt. So it makes it so you're going to be able to generate some more mana, and then Fireball gets to have more radius, and then on top of that, the Destructive Fireball, you're going to be able to get increased crit strike damage, and it gets even further if you go and hit 3 or more enemies. Then this is the big buff that I've been waiting for, and I've been saying, guys, Chain Lightning and Hydra will probably be buffed because they were so underperforming after the beta. So starting right off, Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning was amazing in the beta, and well, now it's going to be much better because it gets more damage each time it bounces, right? And now it used to give you only more damage when you would bounce it off of yourself, but now it's not the case. And then on top of that, the chance to form Crackling Energy got increased. I'm not sure if Crackling Energy is going to be endgame viable, but hopefully I want everything to be somewhat viable, right? So small numerical changes to like Veer's Mastery, and then Essu's Ferocity, and it's a small little change with that. And then Combustion, your burning effects deal 20% increased damage plus an additional 2% per unique source of burning that you have applied on the enemy. And then what else did they change over here on the Paragon? There's a lot of just damage reduction built into the Sorceress. This is going to be a nice change over here, a nice like 5% here and there. And this is going to be even more insane in Season 2. Sorceress is going to get even more powerful, and the reason why is because, well, the resistances will start actually working properly, and that will be massive. So Sorceress is going to be getting much better. Now, they've also changed some other bonus damages by like 1%, like overall, and then there's also giving you extra maximum life. So they're buffing Sorceress in multiple different departments, damage reduction and more life. And on top of that, the Hydra buff over here, here's one of the Hydra buffs. It makes it so you have an additional Hydra and the duration is increased. Before, it would give you additional Hydra but decrease it. So I'm not sure if it's, you know, better to have like a bad roll or a good roll for it to like roll over, if that makes any sense, in terms of like the aspects changing. And then just small other changes, and then change the ball lightning, the orbits around you. You actually get to deal more damage over there. So again, that's going to be a nice little buff with that. And then the recharging aspect, this one is actually major. So with Chain Lightning, each time it bounces, you would gain 2 to 3 mana. It only used to work when you hit like a boss or elite. So that's a really nice change over there. And then also they're buffing Frozen Orb, but I think this Frozen Orb change is not enough. The Chain Lightning one may actually be pretty good. That's more cast, more mana, and you get the more damage every single time it bounces. And when you get more bounces, then it's just basically more damage, right? So Chain Lightning might be something that's super powerful. And then on top of that, they're changing some of the legendary aspects, so we got extra bonus damage against some numerical stats. There's the unstoppable duration gaining increased, and then on top of that, giving you 10% bonus armor. Then we have Lucky Hit with your Pyromancy skills, have a chance to restore mana. That one could actually be maybe pretty decent. And then on top of that, the one with the blizzard where you're standing in it to get damage reduction, it gives you it extended while you're leaving the blizzard, so that's going to be nice. And then extra mana regen, that's always a nice welcome sight. Now this is where it gets interesting, because like I've been talking about this, and I just literally dropped my video on how to fix all the Sorceress uniques, and we're still working on making an entire list so I can send a Blizzard as a partner and they can maybe implement some of these changes. I don't know if they've already have these set to go, but they are doing some stuff. So the Gloves Illuminator, if you guys are wondering what these are the pair of gloves where like Fireball bounces as it travels, but it does less damage. They're actually buffing it, so the damage reduction is not as high, and they're reducing the, I guess, distance. So this makes it so you can hit the target multiple times, a little bit easier. But here's where it gets interesting. They changed the damage to stun affix applied with Lucky Hit to change to Restore Resource. So if we look at this, we have a chance to stun. Now, if you've played this game, you've realized that the aspect control is one of the most important things. And the reason why is because that's where you get all of your multipliers. So this is actually a nerf, which is weird because I'm like looking at it like I'm not trying to like criticize the game too much in terms of its game design decisions, but this would be a nerf. The amount of damage you get when you stun a target, right, versus non-stun targets is massive. It's 35x multiplicative. To change to resource, you're actually nerfing the item, even if you change this damage penalty. So there is some things that I'm kind of cautious about, and I'm just like, well, you know, they really need. I think they just need to get the streamers to really fix these uniques. To be honest, I think that you know, I'm hoping and I'm going to reach out. I want to try to get like a group, hopefully get a group meeting, and we could really fix these uniques. Because again, stun damage again is so much stronger than this change of what is it, like 20%? Because again, the multiplicative, right, much stronger overall. But yeah, that's what they said with the Gloves Illuminator. But I think that some of these unique changes need to be, I guess, more addressed, because the reason why some of these items and the uniques are just so bad in the game isn't just because of their effects, but you're losing out on that legendary aspect, right? Okay, anyways, rant a little over about that item over there. It's just that like it's just not going the correct direction, if that makes sense. Anyway, starting with Barbarian, you're just getting some extra resource over here. Rupture, getting a buff as well as double swing, so that's going to be nice. And then Legend Strike, which is the skill most people use, that's getting more resource, so that's nice on that one as well. You get increased damage to charge, but the problem, again, with most of these things is you don't have damage to core skills, and that's kind of like the main thing that you would want to try to scale on Barbarian, right? Because you have like the passive at the very end, where you're able to get like more damage with core skills times 135x multiplicative. It's just insane, right? Anyways, Barbarian, we have Violent Upheaval, so change to upheaval damage to these 2 enemies or boss. You can berserking. And then on top of that, the passive, so the aggressive resistance damage reduction got increased by 1%. The gushing wounds, the bleed damage based on crit is increased to 115. And then bleed damage when overpowering is increased, but it's kind of hard to scale overpower unless you're really making a build with it. They said they wanted to make overpower like more viable. The problem is that on some classes like Rogue, well, you get 3% overpower, so like a lot of these stats are kind of worthless, right? Then we have unconstrained, so then the berserking damage gets increased by 10%, and then they update it to like work, I guess, properly with tooltip. And then walking arsenal duration is increased by 2 seconds, so you can kind of upkeep it a little bit more, and more just resource overall over here. So I'm just gonna, again, I'll be fast forwarding some of these changes here just so we can go over them rapid fire. Come on. All right, there we go. There's the next page. Because sometimes they would hold up on the page, they would talk about the changes. Anyways, Legendary is the aspect of Astral Force, so more damage over there. Thorns, Deathwish aspect, so that's a nice little increase, because I do like Thorns. And then we have Core Skill Refund, higher like chance, or higher numerical change on that one. Aspect of Ancestral Charge, damage increased, Burning Rage, so damage increased, Bulk Athos, the Earthquake Barb might be a little bit more viable now because you get the damage bonus increase, and I believe this is multiplicative, another 10% extra, almost like half of an aspect, right? And then the uniques, so the damage got increased a little bit by the Fields of Crimson. I believe this is like the Rupture one. The damage got increased, Rupture cooldown reduction, affects replaced with bonus crit strike damage, so that's a nice change. I don't know if this is going to be enough, though, to compare to like just having a two-handed stat power, right? Because I believe this is a two-handed sword. And then the Hellhammer, the damage got increased. They really need to buff this up by a lot more, I think, if people want to actually use these again, because of losing out on that power. It is pretty big. And then the Opus over here, the physical damage got replaced with vulnerable. Again, you're losing out on the aspect, which is the more important thing. And then with 100,000 steps, the attacks reduce the cooldown, affects replaced with bonus evade charges, and the damage against stun affects applied with bonus movement speed. And then on top of that, the basic skill damage got replaced with cooldown reduction for battle trance. Okay. And then the bonus attack speed to other skills got increased by a decent amount. I mean, we're getting almost double right there, a little bit more than double right there with the battle trance. And then in terms of Rogue, what are the Rogue changes? Honestly, not really that big. So we have the fundamental invigorating strike, so the energy threshold got increased, so this is a buff. Forceful Arrow changed to every third cast pierces enemies. Then we have Caltrops getting damage bonus increased to 5%. This is actually pretty big. If I go to the Rogue, I was always talking about Caltrops. They've buffed this skill so many times, and I know what the problem is with Caltrops. It's actually a really good skill. The problem with Caltrops is that it has this animation where you have to do it and you jump back, and it takes so long to the point where you would just lose out on all the damage bonuses, and it just doesn't feel good. So this is actually pretty insane because it's 6 seconds, and then they're changing to 5, so 6 times 5. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a pretty massive amount of damage. It's almost doubling it right there. And then on top of that, you can get up to 10 as long as they are vulnerable targets. This is actually a pretty good buff, but again, people just don't want to use it because of the way it feels. Next up, what they need this Caltrop to do is they need to make it so the animation just activates just like the rest of the traps. It doesn't jump back like was evasive fire in Diablo 3. That's what they don't like with it. Anyways, next up, Rain of Arrows, the Supreme Rain of Arrows. Oh, that poison trap got like barely any buff, but it's a buff, right? Anyways, the Supreme Rain of Arrows, the change to Rain of Arrows, first wave knocks down enemies versus the second wave, so it's like buff, but are people going to be running it? Probably not. Hakan is still just overall really bad, and then over here, they're going back to like the Barbarian, I guess, in terms of talking about this, which we already go over, but sometimes they would talk back and forth and then kind of mention things, so we're just going to go fast forward this because we've already talked about it. And then on top of that, Siphoning Strikes, this thing, it's unfortunately still pretty bad compared to what it used to be. So passives over here, we have Victimized Lucky Hit Chance getting increased, Rugged, the damage reduction against damage over time, that's a buff over there. So Siphoning Strikes, so it's Lucky Hit Chance increase. It doesn't, we just the problem is that it has to be on crit and lucky hit. The thing that we need it to be changed is just on crit you get heals. It's not like Rogue is this ultimate mega tanky class that's like Earth and Bulwark Druid. It's not even anywhere near that. I think that just getting that small amount of like boost from the Siphoning Strikes would be very nice, because the proc chance is just simply too low for a lot of people, especially in the earlier stages of the game. Not only requiring you to get a lucky hit, but a crit as well. It just becomes almost worthless in the earlier stages of the game, whereas before it was like okay-ish. Anyways, legendaries, the aspect of Elusive Menace, it no longer requires hits to be from close enemies, and the aspect of Quickening Fog changed to you automatically drop a smoke grenade at the end of your dash, and then cooldown got changed over there. So, and again, just really small changes for Rogue, nothing really big. The uniques, and this is something that I think was terrible, all stats affects replaced with, it says instead of you're getting all stats, you're getting vulnerable damage. The main problem with Windforce is the legendary power does not guarantee knockback. If it guaranteed knockback and did double damage, then we'd be looking at something good. Again, you're losing out on your legendary power. It's just simply not worth to have like a small 20% chance of getting some extra damage, and then on top of that, well, you get a small chance to maybe get a knockdown, right? You want that guaranteed knockback on it. That if you get 100% chance to knock back, and then on top of that, the chance to do double damage was at least like, you know, maybe 50%, then maybe people would try it. Again, you're losing out on the two-handed like special like thing for your Rogue, and then the Word of Hakan, the ultimate damage affix replaced with cooldown reduction. Still pretty bad overall. You want cooldown reduction, you want energy cost reduction, and then on top of that, movement speed, and it just doesn't offer those currently. So that's unique is still probably, in my personal opinion, pretty bad. Anyways, in terms of the Druid, the Spirit, nice little buff overall with getting some extra Spirit, so it'll make the early game a little bit better. They made the buffs on the Pet Wolves, because no one really runs those to my knowledge. It's kind of like Thorn Creeper for the most part. Increase the numerical stats on it, so it'll make it a little bit better for the early game if you want to run like a pet druid. You know, Raven's got buff, Rabies over here getting increased damage over time by a decent little amount. It's like a quarter of it. And then legendaries over here, the spirit cost reduction. On top of that, damage dealt getting increased by 20%. And then an aspect of alpha damage increase, Mangled getting extra resource, so that's going to be nice. And then the Overload lucky hit chance increased by double. So again, nice numerical changes for the Necromancer over here. All right, so we have the skills Bone Spirit, the enhanced Bone Spirit cooldown time reduction increase from 6 to 7. And then we have Wither legendary board, so the change of it will make it so the bonuses are increased from 50 to 40, or I'm sorry, reduced from 50 to 40, and then bonus damage per 40 willpower increased from 2.5 to 4. So that's probably still a buff overall. Legendaries, the aspect of Reaper changed to damaging enemies with Sever, has a 10 to 20% chance to spawn a pool of blight under the target that deals 20 to 60% bonus damage. The effect can only happen once every 3 seconds. And then with the aspect of Exposed Flesh, we have it changed to a lucky hit up to a 10% chance to generate 30 to 50 essence when hitting a vulnerable enemy. So that one could be maybe kind of cool to mess around with. I mean, that's a decent amount of chunks right there, especially with the new heart, the one that makes it so you drain. And then the aspect of Decay, increased damage, aspect of Torment, the essence regeneration got increased by an insane amount, 20 to 30 to 90 to 170. That is like bonkers levels of a buff in terms of like percentage wise. Like that's tripling, like oh, that's like way more than triple. Like that's, was that 6 times a hexa? Like it's insane. Okay, the numbers are crazy on that one. Hulking, legendary category changed from resource to utility, so you can put it on, was that like your rings? And then on top of that, chance for Golem to reduce its cooldown got increased, chance for Golem to spawn a corpse, and so just nice little buffs over there. Unfortunately, we still don't get a movement speed. Okay, so the following attacks now deal reduced damage to minions, so hopefully your minions won't be ripping as fast, especially when they're standing in AoE. So with the Malignant Heart upgrade, this is a buff. So it says Cage Heart of the spell breaking changed to upon taking elemental damage, you gain 10 to 20% damage reduction, which I believe it used to be like the element of whatever you were taking, which was bad before because resistance is still kind of med in the game. But just getting flat DR, that's much better. So that will be a nice little buff over there. And then Temerity, this is one of the things where it could be pretty insane. And like I said before, you may want to just wait to play because then you're getting the old one. The old one right now, if you keep on playing right now until August 8th. August 8th is when the new good one drops. So the all stats is replaced with maximum life. That's a nice buff. Barriers is based on maximum life. It used to work on base life versus maximum life. This is pretty insane. And the reason why is you're going to be getting basically like double or more than like triple amount of your temerity shield. So it might be one of the best things in the game. And it says now properly counted by conditions, checking for the players having barrier. Now, if you guys remember, now everything can roll lucky hit on barrier and extra barrier generation, all these other barrier things, right? Before, I didn't even know this. I don't know if there's a bug or it was intentional, but like if you get some certain conditions that required you to have barrier, if you had temerity, it apparently didn't work. But now that it works, you can get more damage while you have barrier, lucky hit with barrier, and then now you're going to be able to get lucky hit a lot more consistently, especially if you are playing any build that normally doesn't have it, like basically the rogue and kind of the barbarian are the ones where you can kind of upkeep your barrier. I guess there's bulwark druid that can kind of keep it up, but like rogue in particular, well, you kind of had to play temerity or you'd have to run some aspects that weren't very consistent. So this is a nice little change as well with that. And then they pretty much just talked about the rest of the, like, I don't know, 40 minutes here was all the information, and they did go over some of the questions, but for the most part, I went over the important things, and that is specifically when it's coming out. That's August 8th, and on top of that, I mentioned about the sigils and the other changes coming to the game, which again, they're removing the change, or the sigils will not have the resource drain cold enchanted. That's basically what they were talking about, but I went over the important stuff because this was like an hour and 40 minutes long in terms of a stream, but we covered everything in a shorter amount of time. So anyways, what do you guys think of this patch? Is this patch going to make you super excited coming back to the game? I'm going to also cover the patch notes when they come out because they mentioned there's going to be more changes to uniques. Even if they change all of the uniques, like bad stats, like basic skill and or like slowed targets to make it core, vulnerable, crit, which are going to be arguably just a lot better, I still think that this game needs a lot more to keep people excited about the game, especially because Path of Exile 2's announcement just dropped. And if you guys haven't seen that, definitely check that video out. I just covered it, and my mind is actually blown away by that. And I need this patch to blow me away when it comes out to get excited to hop back into this game, because after all the nerfs, it's a little bit discouraging to play, but at least we are moving in the right direction, and it is steps to making this game much better overall. But let me know your thoughts on the new changes making the bosses harder, but they're going to guarantee a drop. I mean, I think that as long as you're giving us harder content, make the rewards proportional. But a legendary in this game is still not going to be super valuable compared to some of the uber uniques. I think we need uber unique shards. Let's say we collect 5 of these shards, and these shards can be acquired not like every single boss fight, but like at a reasonable rate, and then maybe we could just salvage a unique and we get a unique shard, and then we could go to the vendor and just buy the Shaco, because right now, if you've hit level 100, there really isn't any huge chase to keep on playing when you're level 100, because what are you going to be getting? Are you really going to be getting that Shaco? Well, maybe if you're playing for 70 years straight, you'll get it, but I think we need a more linear path or some way to get to these uber uniques, and hopefully that can be addressed. I don't think it's happening right now, maybe in Season 2. Anyways, that's my thoughts. Let me know yours down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it, subscribe so you don't miss out when we cover it when the patch actually does come out with all of the extra patch notes, all the changes to the uniques. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!